Okay, good afternoon, welcome to the school committee of the whole on June 9th, 2025. We'll all rise and speak. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In attendance, we have Mr. Fred Sinella, Mr. John Kingston, Mr. Anthony Caggiano, myself, David Petra Keith, and also with us are Dr. Kelly, Dr. Belushi, and Matt Cruz. Are you a doctor? No. No. You only play one on TV?
And that's it.
We'll give him an honorary doctor.
Next graduation.
Doctor in finance.
Yeah.
You're gonna get one of those. Okay, on the books tonight, we're discussing school transportation. And there is just for everyone's edification, there is a current budget deficit of $1.9,111,000. I know, does everyone have the sheet that was sent out with transportation analysis?
Yeah, Robert
Okay,
provided
good.
policies.
So I guess I would like to hear, Mr. Galucci has some updated potential numbers you want to share with us?
Yeah, sure. So specifically with outside special education transportation. Thank you to Ms. Senna for conducting rigorous analysis as we do every year, where we try to combine students, take into account students that are going to different schools, take into account students that have come off our rolls. I am happy to report in summary that we're looking at entering next year at this moment with $600,000 less of a responsibility for outside transportation. I do want to highlight there are 2 students with significant disabilities, and that's as far as I'll say because I don't want to breach student confidentiality. But by those students coming off of our rolls, they are about $99,000 each. And so I say that to kind of highlight the fact that that's a significant cost savings. However, on the other side of that coin, if we were to get new students into the district that required that type of transportation, that would bounce back the other way, the cost of that. But Denise Senna did a really nice job of trying to combine some students that are going to particular areas, and we're gonna see if that plays out where we can get the kids there in under an hour, which is the state law. If it doesn't, again, that might swing the other way, and we might have to get another van to take them if kids were going to, say, Lexington and Bedford, we might be able to combine that run. So those are the things that Denise was very strategic with, as she always does each year. But this year a little more aggressive. And the other piece that I wanted to add, Denise has established really good relationships with vendors. So we actually have seen some of the vendor costs reduce from last year. And that's a testament to her work, making vendors aware that bids have gone out and obviously establishing a good relationship with those vendors.
So Dr. Belushi, with that, and I first of all, what Ms. Senna is doing is wonderful. She's doing yeoman's work by herself, really small department, as we know. There's not a lot of staff in that department, so we appreciate the work that she's done in her team. The vendor contracts, that wouldn't include the big bus contract,
Correct.
right? Do you think there's any give on that? Because, and again, I'm not trying to cast any negative thoughts on them, but when we only get one bid, it's not competitive. It seems to be the consistent bid process over the last few years. We're not getting competitive bids, we're getting one bid. And it seems like that's how the greater Boston area is working. So to accuse anyone, I don't know, is there an opportunity that they would revisit their bid to get a little bit more competitive? Or
that I don't know, but what I will say is it's frustrating to us as well.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, she goes out to everyone to make them aware that bid's out there.
Right.
And like you said, we didn't get one back.
But we are getting better feedback from the smaller operators that are
Correct.
independent
Yes.
contractors that are doing smaller
Yep.
runs for us, individual runs, which
Yep.
we all know there are plenty in our community. I think there's more of there's more of a hungry appetite from
Yes.
them, which is good. I
Yeah,
wish we get that from the big bus companies
agree,
that have been in our district for a long time.
agree.
Okay,
Can I add one more thing?
Yep.
So the other piece that we're working on and will be working on through the summer, but could impact this positively, we hope. Is engaging with other nearby districts to see if we can split runs with them. I gave you this example before, if we have two kids if there's one student in Winthrop, two students in Revere and one in Chelsea that are all going in the direction of the North Shore to a special ed school, can we get those four kids on one vehicle and Revere only pays half the cost instead of the full cost, with Chelsea picking up 25% and Winthrop picking up 25%. We've already spoken to those superintendents and they're interested in exploring this with us. We are also talking to Saugus because we have a number of kids that go through Saugus up to Beverly to a program and seeing if we can work with them. And that's work that Denise and Richie, those superintendents have already agreed that we're gonna get together with our transportation directors. And try to figure out if we can make any of those economies going forward. That's gonna take us some time as well, but we are still doing the work. That could have a positive result on the bottom line.
no, I definitely appreciate that. I'm sure everyone appreciates that. But and it's hard to put a number on it, but do you have an estimate? Because I'm just trying to get everyone to understand the picture of, we're now, great news, we're approximately 1.3 million short, which is better than what we walked in with 5 minutes ago. Do you see that as a couple $100,000, is $100,000?
I think so, and also we're looking at inside special ed. So kids that have to go to non-neighborhood schools because services are offered at other Revere schools. One of the things that we're looking at is trying to secure small buses. Which house 15 students as opposed to 2 vans that house 7 each. Unfortunately, we've run into a little bit of, there's a shortage of small buses, so we don't know. Denise is still pushing and trying to get that done. So that in combination with Dr. Kelly said about other districts, I think you hit the nail on the head, a few $100,000, maybe more on top of the 600,000 is the hope. That's an optimistic number.
Okay, gotcha. All right, and I wanted to turn it over to some of the committee, but so just again, a reminder. I don't think that anyone, and I know that we'll all say the same thing, but I don't think anyone wants to reduce service when it comes to transporting our students. We've had a pretty rich history of what we've been able to do, but the times have changed, literally. So we have to make some harder decisions, but we're faced with between, let's just say 1.1 and 1.3 million dollars in deficit. So adjustments will likely need to be made, or there is the opportunity to dip into a circuit breaker. That is the potential. I don't know if there's a willingness to do that. It's, I don't think it's solely up to one person's decision, but it would be basically, if we use that circuit breaker this year to cover the gap, then it's just gonna make our decision even harder and greater next year. So all we're really doing is pushing the decision down the road, which I would strongly advise against, or at least we'd have to hedge it somewhat. But I did wanna, I know, by the way, first of all, congratulations to Victor and Jacqueline Monterosso for the birth of their child, Nicholas Franklin Monterosso, and I'm so proud, happy for you both. And I know everyone's healthy and happy at home, but Miss Monterosso did send us a letter. I'd like to read it on the record for everybody. She's unable to be here, obviously just had the birth of their child in front. As you begin this difficult discussion around transportation funding for our students, I ask that you please consider all possible options before we change our policy and make children walk 2 miles to school. Please explore if this chapter is cheaper to give the students MBTA passes in partnership with policy change, so they still have methods of transportation, or explore if there are other ways we can cut costs, like adding into the policy that if a student doesn't use the bus within 3 weeks of the school year, they are removed, they're removed. I think if we can also reduce the number of empty seats coupled with MBTA passes, then that could help reduce costs. If we do have to change the policy, I ask that we scaffold it first and start with the oldest students and grades before we make elementary or middle school students walk alone. We can revise the policy to increase the radius, if essential, to only apply to certain grades or ages if it doesn't have to be all students at once. Respectfully, Vice Chair Monterosso. And also, this is from, Marcia, I don't know if she wanted this on the record, in the record it is, or certainly on the record, but, unfortunately, school committee woman Rizzo is not able to be here. But she had also made a recommendation to eliminate the RHS busing cost at approximately $317,000. Additionally, would support a proposed 2-mile limit for middle school transportation, which would be about $1,158,000. And this would still, at the $1.9 million shortfall, still stays a shortfall. If we were to take those recommendations from school committee woman Rizzo, we would essentially cover the full gap. And that's a recommendation from her, but I'd like to hear from the rest of the board. If you have any thoughts, recommendations.
A while back, when budgets were tight and everything else, a lot of communities were going with athletic fees and bus fees. Have we discussed any possibility as an alternative to give parents an option of bus passes? I know they had like sliding scales if there's more than one in the family and all that. Has that been approached or looked at or anything of that before we arbitrarily cut it?
We haven't looked at charging fees to families for transportation. I think that if the committee was to decide to, for example, eliminate all transportation for high school kids, maybe that's something that we could explore after. Are there enough families that would be willing to pay that maybe we could have a bus where people paid for the service to go get the kids if they live that far away, or whatever the committee decides should be.
Well, I think with the communities that, I guess the fees were for everybody, if they, like we run 15 buses. That would still run 15 buses, but the prorated cost would be on the families. They would be able to take it.
And would there be any, so I guess to answer that from here, I haven't heard of charging bus fees. I know that other communities do.
Yeah, well,
Other
I'm just
communities
saying
also
that,
charge sports fees.
yeah.
Relative to cover transportation and their equipment costs.
Yeah.
Above and beyond with the, so, I think, my friend in Melrose pays $350 a year for their children to attend the bus.
I think Wakefield was like 400, yeah.
Right, so it's not unheard of, and it's certainly an option,
I'm just saying that if we arbitrarily 2 miles enforceable.
Yeah.
It's gonna put a lot of them who have no choice, at least this is a choice. Again, I'm not familiar with how, how it's done, but I think it should be at least
I'm
that
trying to-
running short of time.
Right, no, that's the thing is, we are getting, I mean, certainly the school year's out, we wanna make sure we get information to parents for the following year, but I'm thinking of, how many on a large yellow bus, how many students fit on it? 55, so 55 divided by 100,000 roughly, it's about $100,000 a bus.
Yeah, 5, yeah, you're right.
So.
Yep.
So, So, I mean, I don't know if a student's gonna pay $1,800 a year to cover the cost of, if 55 students paid $1,800 to cover the cost of bus, correct?
Mhm.
That number right? I'm not a math teacher.
If you say so, you just.
Well, 5,500, it's almost $2,000.
They'll cover the whole
Yeah.
cost, just cover some of it.
In other words,
Well, I'm just saying,
you get rid of the
to cover
deficit.
to cover the net cost of a
Yeah.
bus, a student, it's approximately $1,800 a year to transport a student. $1,800 a year to transport one student. So that's if the bus is full. Okay. So and again, what is the number? I guess that's what you recommend.
But I also think that elementary, I think they're up to 80 on a bus. That's changed.
Elementary is more, but it's not 80.
Yeah, it's like 62, I think it says it right on the bus. I think it's like 62 or something like that,
So-
62, 64.
So then it drops to 1,500, 1,600.
Yeah, own it, but okay, just an option.
I don't think we get many takers. I know that I struggle to wanna do that, I do drop my kid off.
But I think that we have to look at if we go with the options with the MBTA, that's still gonna be a cost factor.
It is, so the kids can all get a student pass, which gives them a reduced rate on the MBTA, whether they're taking the bus or the train. or whatever they do, it gives them the student rate. We did look into, getting the free passes. It's $30 per month per child to do that. So that's about $300 for the school year, for each one of those kids. That is something that we could look at doing if you wanted to do that for, at least the older kids who might be traveling more than 2 miles, or, you're not required to do that. I don't know that we'd want it, that giving little kids a free pass on the MBTA would be a good idea if they're gonna be unmonitored, but, if that's something that you wanted to explore for, grades 7 through 12, where no transportation is required, that could be something.
So do we know specifically, I know, and I appreciate this breakdown, so it says here, there's 3 buses for high school. Equaling about $317,000. So if you did the math at 55 per bus, we're only transporting. Do the math. 110, 165. Okay,
Right.
approximately 165 students a year are taking high school bus transportation. Outside of special needs, we're not touching, by the way, for viewing audience, there's no special needs changes here, we are lawfully obligated with all of those. And homelessness and all that, this is just regular big bus. 165 students a year take advantage of the bus. For high school.
Diane, are we subsidizing the $30 or are they paying?
We're not doing those passes right now at all.
But Mr. Chairman, would we absorb the cost? Then we're defeating the purpose of, if we're gonna subsidize the passes. I think if we look into it, then this is what, if the parents want an alternative, it's gonna cost them $30 a month.
So $30 a month at 9 months, approximately
10.
10 months, so say even more, so it's gonna be $50,000+ a year. But in $30, which is a lot less than $300,000, if you did 160 students. At $30 times $300 a student, what happened?
Yeah, and the question I would have there is, especially at the high school level, there are more kids who would qualify. Because they're more than 2 miles who are not currently using transportation. So that 50,000 might be an underestimate, because I'm sure if the school committee passed this policy that. Kids who live more than 2 miles from the high school could have a free MBTA pass. A lot more people would want to
Yeah.
take advantage of that.
Well, there's 2 things and I would just say that this is one way to look at it, right? Is if we. Said, hey, we're not gonna fund. I'm just saying, if we said, hey, we're not gonna fund the high school buses, 370, that line item gets cleared. And we say, well, we will put $60,000 towards MBTA passes for high school students. Now there's a cap, so it's a restricted amount, it's still a net savings. And you're saying we will subsidize up to $60,000 for school transportation through the MBTA, which would affect all of the 160 or so students, or a reduced amount and everyone gets half off. They pay $15, now you're getting 300 kids. I mean, that might be an option too, where now the net savings is still around $250,000. It gets you a little closer to that, that's one option. I don't think I think that's actually a pretty good option. I think it's generous, and I also think that it could actually, you might help more students. That's the case.
As long as the city's comfortable with it, I think, and I don't say do nothing, that's not what I'm saying. I think if we leave this be. It gives you literally a year to get more information out there, have parent meetings, get everything out there. School's out next week, so we're really kind of rushing a process. Because as Dr. Kelly said, once school's out, people kind of tune out for the summer. And now you're trying to, contact them over the summer and whatever. So I think if we take the 1.3 million out of the circuit breaker funds for 1 year, just for this year. Do our best in the fall to notify parents, look, changes are coming, and outline some, some parent information nights, look, maybe we're gonna do an MBTA bus. Maybe we're gonna do this, maybe we're gonna do that. I just think to be able to do this in a week, I think is a lot. So, we're only using 1.3 of a potential 2 million, so it's not like we're using the whole thing. And I think that gives us a whole year literally to plan a better, get a better mousetrap at this point. So, because, you know, like I said, we're still 700,000, hopefully in that fund. So, cause I don't think it's fair, to the parents to, basically try to get something together and get it out there by the end of the school year. Cause transportation's important, and how they're gonna get to school is important. And this way we could have parent meetings, it's giving you a lot more time to make preparation. Just a thought.
No, I don't disagree with you. I would also say that even though we wanna give them as much information and time. We're not forced to make this decision in the next week. It would be nice if we had a full consensus by then. But we also know that, we're beholden to the taxpayer, we're beholden to what we can actually use. So I just say that there is a certain dangerous element when we are paying. With money we don't have right now. We're paying for something we don't have the money, like you don't have the physical money, you're using a reserve amount of money. That is only going to look at an even bigger cost next year. So it's like, the next year, the reimbursement will be less possibly, or if, the circuit breaker will be less. And we're gonna be spending more, so next year's $14 million in transportation inherently goes up 5%, 4.14, so you're gonna throw another $500,000 at it, 5%. So quarter of,
I thought, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I thought someone had said that the circuit breaker was going up, percentage.
With this year.
For this year. That was, that was through legislative action.
Right, so the 2 million is more than 2 million potentially?
No, this year's they're already using,
Yeah, I saw that at the top, but I
2.5,
thought that was with the 1.3 I'm talking about is future money. You use past money to knock the 14 million down, correct? On the first page. Maybe not on this one, but on a previous version. Yeah, no, on this one. Anticipated reimbursement, those are from the current,
that's the additional money.
but that's the current year. The 1.3 that I'd like to use is from I'll call it the future year, next year,
Right,
next school year.
and I guess I'd say even worse, now we're using almost $4 million in we're using almost $4 million in. I wouldn't say stockpile, but in separate funds to cover the cost of this year. That's a dangerous amount of money. I'm just putting it out there. I know that making tough decisions is, I know we're
I'm
strong.
not against a tough decision, it's just, it's almost, we're in the middle of, well, close to the middle of June. And, to make these kind of decisions and, when trying to get information out there as best we can, it could be a tough first day of school, because people are waiting for something that's not done.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Kajian, I'm sorry.
Okay, first of all, on the special needs.
Yep.
Do we offer the parents that, because then sometimes they need specialized buses and everything, do we offer the parents something where, if they transport the child themselves? And so we already offer that.
And actually, Anthony, I wanted to mention that, that's one group that I left off my description. Every year, we send a letter to children who attend a school as a solo rider,
Right.
meaning they're the only one that attends that school, they have no other classmate on the van. We offer $150 for the day for the parent to take. We actually got, I believe, 3 to 4 this year, which was another savings, typically we only get one that says yes.
Okay.
So we actually had more luck with that this year, and kudos to Denise and the special ed department, they made phone calls, explained it all. And what we do in that letter, Anthony, is we say, if another child comes into the district and suddenly we have 2 attending that school, we will give you 2 weeks' notice, but we're gonna use a vendor. Because then it's a savings when we can put 2 children on 1 vehicle as opposed to,
Okay.
paying 2 parents.
My next question is this anticipated reimbursement is, we already have this money, right? The 2.5 million that we automatically get, correct?
The 2.5 million that says anticipated reimbursements is made up of 2 sources.
Okay.
The first one is the circuit breaker transportation portion that's being received this year. We know exactly what that will be. And then in the month of July is when we receive the homeless transportation reimbursement. And our expectation, our budget has been that it will be $500,000. I won't know that for another 5 or 6 weeks, but that's the 2 amounts that are going into. We will have those in the reserve account before next school year begins, yes.
And so can I just say one more thing to help clarify that? If you look at the table just below that, the detail.
Yep.
The sped outside reimbursement, 2,086,388. That's the circuit breaker that we know we have from this year. And then below that, the 500 is the estimated. Those combined are where Matt's getting that 2.586 at the top of the page. And I just want to go back to the point that John was making a minute ago. That is known money because we do have it right now, and that's the difference between that amount and what we're looking at coming next year.
But normally when I ask, and I should ask the city more, I mean, if you do that directly. Is the circuit breaker money that the city gets, is it automatically used for next year for the transportation, or the money is?
Yeah, it's, no, that's exactly what it does. It's like, so you get the reimbursement for this year to pay next year. It's just, it keeps kicking it out a year.
Right,
So all you're really, if you're
Right.
using money that you're getting for if you're using next year's money, it's just exacerbating next year's problem. So the gap, so if we have to make a $1.3 million decision this year, and we decide to use $1.3 million of circuit breaker money, we're gonna have to make a minimum of a $2.6 million decision. The decision just grows. You're just paying money you're paying with money you really don't have.
so the money from the circuit breaker last year
Is paid into this year.
is part of the 2.5.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's not this isn't a special fund that pays for anything else. It just pays for transportation.
And the next
So
thing.
can I point one more thing out? If you go to the last page of Matt's thing, he's got all of the circuit breaker.
Right.
And you can see there's that 2,086,388, that's that same number that we received in FY 25 to be used in FY 26. So that's the same amount that we know we have that money to use for next year. And what is being contemplated is to use this additional 2 million in FY 26, that we're not sure exactly what that number is gonna be yet. We don't know yet. But Matt, using the historical of the last 3 years, that's a good underestimate of what we would get. That's a rational estimate.
Now, the busing contracts that we negotiated, how far is that going forward now? Or is it just yearly? You do a 5-year, what is?
For the regular transportation, it's a 3-year contract.
Okay.
We just did that work this winter. So we have 3 years coming at those costs.
Okay, and what's the increase for next year?
5%, I believe.
Yes, it was a little more than 5% from previous contract to the first year of this one, and then it's 5% from there.
Sure.
We also this winter did the work of the special education inside. Smaller yellow buses, so that contract will also be kicking in the month. For this year, the first of the 3 years.
And it's an average of a 5% increase also?
Right.
Okay.
Each year.
Right. And the other thing I wanted to ask is, I know it's a 3-year out. Did we look at, like, we partners with 311? That we partner, say, like with the Winthrop and Chelsea, and offer the bus, either. One company gets both cities and towns, because what's right now is bus companies. Got us at the mercy.
Yep.
One will only bid, just like at the Volk and other schools, only one company bids, so you're at the mercy. Is there any talk about doing that in the future or anything?
So having mutual agreements, like intercity agreements with other cities, we certainly can start having those conversations. I know that the only thing that Dr. Kelly and Rich you mentioned was using some of the smaller transportation to kind of pick students up along the way. But I don't know.
Well, why not put-
I use like Everett does, so a lot of schools don't use the big buses like we do, all of them. And then some do, but we can't force a bus company to bid as a group. They clearly don't want to, they clearly aren't doing it intentionally. And they're saying,
No, I know.
hey, you bid Revere, we'll bid Everett, you stay off of mine, sure. But, we can certainly look at making some sort of an intermunicipal agreement, but they might just do the same thing and just spread out it's hard to explain, but they might just do the same exact thing, but I look at it going, honestly, use less buses, maybe they'll get more competitive. Maybe next year will be a better bid, when they have 20 less buses as a region going on. And they're sitting in the lot. Just saying, you know?
Do you wanna mention?
Yeah, oh, Milbury Ellis is there. Hi, hey, Jim.
Hey, I'm sorry, my apologies.
Is there any, is there any problem, I'm not in favor, but say we cut buses, is there a problem with the contract? Do we give them like, you're gonna give us X amount of buses?
Up to
Up to, so if we cut them, we're not gonna get
That's
hurt
the
on a
language.
penalty or anything in the contract.
each year,
Okay,
as
no, that's
soon
fine.
as we can, but no later
No,
than
no, that's
early August.
I didn't
We
want
sit with
to.
the companies and we map out what the routes are, what the volume is, where the kids are living to settle them. So that's why the language is written, the contract language is in terms of up to. And what we wouldn't wanna do is say, contract for 15 buses. And then realize, we need 17 and they can't, and then get jammed up. So
I think,
the,
Hey, Sharon, question, Jim.
No, microphone.
so the
Yes.
the shift in the conversation to the numbers that I put together for you. And again, as the CFO, you're naturally conservative. So far, the things that we have talked about have not been policy changes per se. They've been efficiency practices that should generate some cost savings. And then financial practices that could realize future funding earlier if we need to. All of that has variance. Or you could say risk inherent in it. So the work that Dr. Galucci just expressed to us is like really good news, that there's efficiencies there that as we come to the end of the year, we should see them. But it's not changed to policy. And if 3 new students moved in who needed serious transportation, it's on. So far, that's one type of conversation. The numbers that I presented are a shift to certainty. Meaning if the committee votes these policy changes, then these cost savings are not uncertain, they're certain. So the ones that I was asked to run the numbers on, just cascading down, the first one was, well, first we were just to clearly document what are we required to do for transportation. So we've given you that language and basically the second and third clauses don't apply to an urban setting, but the first one does. Your K through 6 students who live more than 2 miles have to be transported. So none of the possible savings solutions that are presented here affect elementary school students. The 3 buses that run would continue to run. We're not looking to change life for our elementary school students. The first situation, and again, it's not a recommendation, it's presenting a possibility is within our legal limits. If we increase the distance for your 6th, 7th, and 8th graders from the 1 to the 2 miles, then you would certainly not have to run that many buses and realize $1 million in cost savings beginning in August.
Say that one more time, so 6, well, 6 we have to provide for, and if we're providing for 6. I mean, how does that work, where we're obligated to provide for 6, and then we have 7th and 8th graders going to the same school, do you know what I mean?
This is just 2 miles.
Just 2 miles.
Yep.
Okay.
So right now, we are transporting 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And have been, that we are not legally mandated to do it. So this first solution still gets all of your 6th graders who legally need to be transported.
This was a recommendation from Stacy. Which kind of spells out that.
So that's the first number, and I just wanna make sure we understand what it's saying is, right now, we transport a lot of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. Who live less than 2 miles from their school to school. If we change the policy to say, we're not transporting any 6th or 7th or 8th graders to school. Who live less than 2 miles away, we are legally permitted to do that,
Mhm.
and it would generate a savings of $1 million. The second analysis that you had me do was say, talk to me about the high school.
Mhm.
We run 3 buses, none of them are legally mandated. To not run those buses would be a savings of $317,000. And then the third solution that I was asked to look at is if we maintained our 2 mile limit by law, but we eliminated the lottery, what savings are realized there? And there we would go down from 10 buses to having to only run 6. And that would be a savings in this year's dollars of 400,000. But that is assuming over time, we are detaching these students from their schools, so those savings would not be realized for several years into the future. These are not hypothetical or variable, these are dollar to dollar cost savings that would be realized with those embracing 1 or 2 or 3 of these solutions. There were no other solutions to present to you that would either not be legally viable or would save any more money than these 3 would. So that's why we put these 3 options to you. So the shift is we are certainly working with variable practices to save as much money as we can. What was presented here is we actually have action we can take in regular education that will generate definitive savings.
I have a question. Dr. Kelly, do you foresee any issues with these proposed cuts that we haven't talked about?
The one thing that I would raise, and I don't have any real data to share with you, but there is data that when transportation to school becomes more difficult for students, especially adolescents, high school age kids, their attendance decreases. So that would be something that we would want to look at and watch if this change was to go into effect, and see what kind of an impact that has.
That's my big concern, Frank, sorry.
I just wanted to share 2 pieces of information that we talked about prior. To Mr. Kingston's point, when Matt had said up to this many buses with the Healy contract. All we have to give is a 2-week notice if we had to change the amount of buses, and there's no penalty.
Thank
The other piece to the mayor's point about high school transportation. So I can tell you that this past school year, 161 high school kids qualified for transportation. 135 took us up on it, so 135 kids from RHS take buses. Thinking about what we talked about with the Charlie cards, and you had set a number at 60K. If we had to pay that out for the 161 that qualified, that would be 48,300. So it's pretty significant savings at the high school level if we were to pursue that MBTA Charlie card for our kids. And to your point, we might even help more than the 161. But I'm just looking at it, it's like around 270,000. And the other piece is it's unlimited, correct? Like
I believe it is unlimited, we would have
Who's
to.
the job?
What was it? Gina?
So we had 161 RHS kids qualify for bus services. And 135 said yes.
And then what was the cost for
The Charlie card was $30 a month times a 10-month school year for each student. So 300 a student for the year.
Do we think the buses would cover the kids, area wise? I haven't taken a bus in a while, I'm aware of some of the routes, but I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm an
Yeah.
MBTA bus expert.
I mean, I don't know either, but
No, I'm
what I-
not faulting it, it's a good idea,
yeah.
it's worth looking at.
what I will tell you is, the most calls that I've received from the high school have been from the Beachwater area. And so we have Blue Line and we definitely have bus service there. I'd have to check the other areas.
Yeah,
to be
no, I'm
honest.
not, yeah.
But the other thing that I thought about as we were having this discussion is when I met with students for their civics projects. A lot of them were asking for Charlie cards as
I know
an
Boston.
alternative, so it's something that's on the students' minds as well. And like at that age, I think they might even appreciate it, especially if it's unlimited, because
No, I
then it's,
think, yeah,
you know,
I don't have a
so
problem.
it's something to think about.
So Aisha, I don't know if this was before you got here, Ms. Milburn, was those potential, and again. We floated the idea, I floated the idea of, rather than spending $317,000 on high school transportation line item, so delete that line item. And add in $50,000 or $60,000 for MBTA transportation to be distributed on a need basis by the, you know, to cover the full cost of the $30 a month for the students that qualify. Or up to the amount of students that take advantage of it, however the district would facilitate. But that would be a net saving of $250,000.
So my only question on that is I'm not familiar with North Revere,
Yeah.
like, do we have confirmation that there's a bus that goes from North Revere to Broadway?
That was my point.
That was the area
That's
I
my
was
point.
unfamiliar.
Yeah,
with.
so there's a bus from Salem Street, but I mean.
I don't know where it ends up.
So that's what I was just gonna say, it might not be exactly in the North Riviera neighborhood, but it might be if they come down to the bottom to the main
Salem.
Salem Street, where they can get on a bus there and it'll. It will come, it will
There's
loop
one that
around, we
takes you
can,
down
confirm
Broadway,
that.
you might not be, you know, so the stop is at Central Ave or, so Central Ave's right there, and then there's another one that's, by the Rite Aid or something like that, right? Walgreens,
Okay,
I think, or just before this, so there's definitely stops in that area. I couldn't tell you the number of the bus, 109, 112, 111, 116, 115, 117, I'm not sure. Yeah, we took 110.
110.
So, but it's one of those somethings that, you know, that to me would be not a bad recommendation. I mean, I know this is the difficult decision, but, you know, Stacy brings up a big point. I mean, the middle school transportation going to 2 miles is $1 million. And it's not a small number, it's significant, and it gives you, it's still transporting many students that wouldn't be required to, yes, the 6th grade students, but 7th and 8th are not required, and it's $1 million. And that covers those two decisions right there cover the gap. And unfortunately, the truth is it makes the decision, we're just prolonging the decision of the next year. That's all you do. And it's gonna be twice as bad next year, it's gonna be twice as bad next year.
well, and I think that to the point that John made earlier about taking some more time to think about it, I think if those two changes were made now. Then we would have the time to think about what is the impact on the lottery, do we take this third step next year? If we're still seeing transportation issues then. But still have time to really think through what impact. Going to neighborhood middle schools would have on the culture in the schools and in particular in the high school. And other issues like that, I think that we need to talk about a little more completely.
Go ahead, no, I'm sorry. You go. I already spoke a couple times.
through the mayor, are the middle school buses, are they filled in the morning?
I don't know the answer to that offhand. We have, the number of students registered to take them would have them full.
Would have them full?
And I'll also add that we never quite fill buses.
Yeah.
So if we get 6 new students, and during that time, we have to ensure that we have those seats if they also qualify.
Available.
Yeah. So it's not like we start to take kids who don't qualify just because there's empty seats, because there could be an influx of new kids.
And I suppose since we're mostly all in agreement to do away with the lottery in a responsible way. I think that, if we do see some major issues with the transportation choices that we're making now, that maybe we'll be able to, you know, use whatever savings we will by doing away with the lottery. I'm saying, we're seeing an issue with high school students where they're not coming to school, you know, and we decide that we wanna do away with the lottery, which looks like it's probably gonna be done in the future, then wouldn't we have a cost savings of like 300,000 or 900,000?
I think it's 400.
400,000, so-
423.
so that could cover, I mean, if we had to go back to that, I'm saying, we would have those funds available to go back to.
Could we potentially look at it, just based on numbers, and I'm doing it off the top of my head. So I would say, based on the numbers that you said on the savings, it looks like, it's about 165 RMA kids. I mean, we're using the same numbers, right? If we said it's 165 RHS at 317, it must be the same, how many? Oh, give or take. Am I reading that right? I'm trying to think if she offered them the Charlie cards as well.
You mean SBA?
Oh,
No, I'm looking at Rumney, the top RMA, 317.
Oh, it's the same for
savings.
SBA.
Oh, so going down from the 6 buses to the 3 buses,
Right.
or for those kids that would have been on the other 3 buses, the Charlie cards?
Yeah, You're still saving $317, and if the I'm assuming the cost would be about 50 again, because it's the same as the high school.
So, yes, that sounds about right. So if you said,
I know Garfield's a little more on the other ones, but.
but if you spread it out equally and said each school would get $50,000 per school, so RMA, Garfield, SBA, and the high school would get $50,000 each to use for this line item. That's $200,000, but you're netting $1.4 million.
1.375 would do that.
Right, so, I mean, I think that's pretty equitable, it's a good option to have. And see where it takes us, now you're saying, we're kind of breaking the delta. I think that I would feel a lot more comfortable if we did that. And we said, okay, we have the circuit breaker to cover the gap if we get there, because we might have more efficiencies. You might find some efficiencies with the special needs transportation, with the outplacement. And we might not have to touch the circuit breaker, but that's a great number to work with, if you're only within $100,000 of
Right.
tapping into that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a pretty good compromise,
Yes, great.
you know,
Mhm.
I would be very much in favor of that.
Just to answer your question. There's no guarantee the buses are full going out or going home. And there's kids who go on and going home, I'm visiting so-and-so, and 3 other kids are on the bus that shouldn't be on.
Yeah.
So. I
Well,
think
we've
it's-
actually got that really tight now.
No, that's what I
Yeah,
was, that's
because
what I
of,
was just, that's what I was just gonna
yeah,
get to.
yeah, yeah.
So that. Anything short of holding their hand, putting them on, going off. And most of the drivers, their duties are to drive the bus. So, I know some systems, they have electric, they scan when they go on, they get off.
Mm. And I think the idea of the Charlie cards for the middle school and the high school, there are added advantages to that, especially for the high school kids who then can also use the Charlie card to go to work.
Internship.
And for the middle school kids, like you were talking about, Fred, if they wanna go to their friend's house after school, they can do that. And then still get on the bus and go home.
Right.
Not, I missed my bus, so now I can't.
I see it as a bunch of.
Yeah, I think it's great. I would want that,
Me
and
too.
on the weekends, they can use it for different things, and they can go to.
Town.
Is, just to clarify, is the criteria for a student to get one of those free prepaid Charlie cards that they live more than 2 miles from school?
I think it's from 1 to 2 miles, then, yeah.
For middle.
The people, my thought was, if I could, Mr. Man, it was the people from 1 to 2 miles that were being kind of displaced.
So,
They
so
would be-
1+ mile at middle school,
Right,
2+ miles at high school?
yes,
No,
That
it
would-
No,
was still 1+,
it
right?
was, well, we were providing 1+ miles for the high school, right?
No.
Oh, we
No.
weren't.
No,
Okay.
no, no, okay.
So then whatever it
Correct,
was,
2+
Okay.
miles.
yeah, whatever
Yeah.
it was.
Going back to what I mentioned earlier about the possibility of having a fee. If we were to subsidize it and they were eligible, $30 a month to shop. I mean, if parents had to go for the whole community.
And I think that there would be a good reflective time at the break. If this is running really lean and there's. More to go around, there's always, you can take some supplemental money and put it in there. If
Well-
you're saving in transportation, you can redirect it potentially. It's still a transportation expense,
Mhm.
if you're not running hot. Cause if you're running hot, which you can't go more, if you cut it down to the number of buses, you have the set number per bus. But let's just say you're not running hot on the out of control stuff, the special needs transportation. And the savings, you can maybe offer it to even more students.
That would be great, and I was, sorry,
no, go ahead. You go.
I was just gonna say, I anticipate that there'd be more demand at the high school than there would be at the middle schools.
Yeah.
So if we were to stick with that $200,000 limit, maybe we could look at what is the demand at the middle schools, and then if there's something left, give it to more high school kids. We can come in from the 2 miles to 1.75 or 1.5 and
Yeah.
work our way.
Review them, Matt. Don't come across the table.
That's the second time you said.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to protect myself. Would it be possible for us, but if we had some extra money and those funds were exhausted and we had more of a demand, could we on the school side pay for some of the child cards, not all of them, but some of them? Say with the 50,000, we go through it at the high school, say, and we got some more kids that, is that an expense that we could incur? Not the whole thing, I'm not saying that.
Oh, sure, it's a transportation.
Okay.
related.
But we can pay for it
The school
on the
department,
school
or-
department? It's gotta be the city, right?
No, we cannot put any,
So I can't give a kid a Charlie card as a school committee.
You can buy anything you want.
I do enough of that, Pat. I know, I'm just asking. No, I'm just afraid, because I think it's a great benefit to a student, especially a high school student. You wanna give me a free Charlie card? I think that's great. I think it takes some of the negative off taking the bus away, and I'm comfortable with that, and I wasn't comfortable when I walked in the room. But I'm also concerned that if we go through the 50, that we have to
Well,
come.
we can always make it 100,000 for the high school and 50 for the elementaries, and I think that gives you plenty of cushion. For the middles, I mean, right?
I'll second that.
So I make the motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, do we have to let the MBTA know that we're anticipating? Because at one time they would put different runs or extra buses on a run.
Yeah.
I don't know what the policy is now.
I don't either. We'll need to get in touch with them. I also know that right now, the allowances for those free bus passes are determined by, so I know Boston, Cambridge and Somerville all have programs with the MBTA.
Yes.
And so we'll have to get in touch with them and make sure that our Revere program meets the needs of the students. And even as we said, like, I would want them to be able to go to Boston if they have the job there after school. And not just have it limited to Revere, so we'll have to get in touch with the I almost said MSBA, MBTA, and clarify all of those.
And they
points.
may also request groups
Mhm.
to see where, I mean, I know Malden Street, one goes up Proctor Avenue, goes through the project. Malden Street, Revere Street, I mean, it's quite accessible on that end of it. And they can have the numbers of the runs and all that.
And one thing I know, because I had to do it once when I had to take the train to work, is that there's a bus from Beachmont Station that goes right to Broadway too. And so that will help all of the kids that live in, that Beachmont, Point Pines area. They can just get to the station, they can get on the bus.
Beachmont and Point of Pine, two different areas.
I know
Okay.
politics, sorry.
No, but they're vastly different
I
areas.
lived in both.
But see, Beachmont back in the old days, that was the only.
Yeah,
and
They're too much.
there is a bus that goes right down, what is that road?
North Shore.
North Shore Road,
Yeah.
that goes to Beachmont, correct? From Point
Yeah, goes
Pines?
to
Yes,
Wonderland.
Yes.
Yes.
Goes to
That's-
Wonderland.
sorry.
Goes to
Oh,
Wonderland.
it goes to Wonderland,
There's a stop right at the new fire station, there's a bus stop there.
okay,
And don't forget about Oak Island.
They go first.
Oak Island.
Oak Island.
There's a bus stop right on North Shore
One
Road.
question,
It'll start at
Back
Yeah.
if I may, how does that, if we offer in the bus pass from the sixth, seventh and eighth instead of busing, how does that affect the lottery now?
I think that. I mean, I'll answer that, it
How would
doesn't
we,
affect it this year, but there's talks about. Slightly about phasing it out in subsequent years, but we haven't. We've all agreed that we're not gonna make that decision until after this school year begins for the fall.
so the sixth, seventh and eighth busing is not gonna be this year?
No,
For
it would
the,
still be
Charlie
for,
Fest.
it would, oh no, it would be for this year.
Charlie, that's.
For students that would be eligible, but they'll still be, if you live outside a 2 mile radius in the middle school. You'd still be eligible for a full bus,
If you're not in the lottery?
it doesn't
The
matter,
lottery doesn't
yeah,
matter.
any middle school, yeah, it's still, because it's still a lot. Yeah. And that would be continued.
Can we just make sure that the minutes reflect these alternatives that we talked about? So like if there's surplus with the high school that will, with the middle school, we'll go to the high school at the one, we said 1.5. And that, if there's any extra money, just to make sure that we're in agreement that when we make this motion, that our intent is recognized
Yeah.
and we don't forget when the time comes if there is that money to appropriate.
And so just to clarify on that, because I think at the end, the mayor might have changed the amounts, did you say 100,000
Yeah,
at the high
for
school?
sure.
High school 100.
Yes.
And then 50 for each
50
middle?
each middle, oh, yeah, yep, I heard that clearly.
Do we wanna make a motion?
Yes, that's my next move.
I actually have
One-
one more
one
question before you
I got you.
do that.
I just forgot.
City lab,
Mhm.
so those kids would be included, so it would be. The high school and city lab for the 100,000 and then 50,000 for each middle school. Which if there's lower demand from the middle schools, that could be moved up to the high schools. So the cap is 250,000. Does that sound right?
That,
It's
that you
taken out.
don't pay for the city lot bus.
I
That's
mean,
one of the double runs.
I know that we don't
Oh,
pay for the
okay.
bus,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they should still be eligible for the
Correct.
Charlie card if
Yes.
we're gonna get rid of their bus, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It might be easier for them.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
would
just wanna make sure a hundred thousand is enough.
I think it will be if
Hundred
we're,
and thirty, only 160 kids are eligible in high school.
130 take.
130 tickets, so at $30 a kid, $300 a child per year, it's more than, it's 40 something.
it gives a good cushion.
Okay,
And we'll have a lottery for the Charlie.
sounds good.
Yeah, right.
One more thing.
And then why don't you put a motion on?
Well, it says me, one more proviso, my only concern is North Revere, I'm not sure how the buses work, so that may be an outlier, sir. If there's no bus that works, we might have to do something about that
You said you're
for the
gonna
middle
pick them up.
school. I'll pick them up, sure.
John Kane, John.
No, I'm serious, I don't know if that there's a bus, I know there's a bus on Salem Street, but where it ends up, I don't know.
Right.
You can't have a kid take,
I'll
you
look
can't
at
have a
that.
kid taking 2 buses in the morning, there'll be more time they get up.
Pretty sure.
I would think the bus would go to, one of. That's a terminus.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That was just my proviso, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
just make sure, but it's you, well, I'll make a motion, yes, I make a, well, I don't want to make a motion, but I will.
Yeah, make a motion.
I make a motion that we, want to correct me if I'm wrong, we increase the minimum mileage on the middle schools from 1 to 2 miles. With the proviso that, Charlie cars will be provided to the students that are affected. Up to an amount of $50,000
High school.
per school, per middle school. Do you want to vote on that one, then vote on the second one, I think that would be the. What do you want on motion?
One motion.
One more, okay, second motion that we eliminate the high school transportation. But offer Charlie cards to those affected as well,
Up to.
up to $100,000.
Second,
Okay. Any discussion?
second,
Second? Okay, roll call.
I think we can vote.
Roll call.
Roll call, Mr. Sinella,
yes,
Mr. Kingston,
Yes,
Mr. Kajian,
Yes,
Ms. Milbury Ellis,
Yes.
Mr. Keith is yes.
Stacy was in agreement with this as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Just did you want to indicate that?
Well, no, this was, this was also, as we read at the beginning of the meeting, Stacy's, comments. This very much is in line with what her comments were. If anything, it's even richer where we're offering the Charlie fence, so. But I'm sure she would agree, but I can't speak for her.
It's lousy to have to cut it all, but.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that the parents, whoever's listening, are gonna hear about this meeting at a later date. We have done nothing with elementary. Elementary stays the same. No, I just want to make that clear in case there's any questions, because you might get 10 questions tomorrow, 10 phone calls tomorrow. What about my elementary? So elementary's untouched.
Any other business?
There is a bus from North Revere. It's at the corner of Linden and Lynn Street, and it
Yeah.
runs right from Broadway.
Right where the park is.
Thank you, Mr. Leach.
No
Dr.
problem.
Lucia.
No problem.
We'll, as for next steps, we'll get in touch with the MBTA tomorrow and try to start getting.
let them,
discussion going.
let them give you some more information, okay?
Yeah,
I did receive a text from a concerned parent. They said that once they contacted the MBTA helped in Everett with busing, so like
that's great.
there would be like, I'm not gonna say an extra bus, but capacity to handle the kids.
So that's why
at dismissal.
know.
No, I just wanted to say that
Great.
if someone says, oh, we can't do that, well, gee, it seems like.
Yeah,
they would
between
never-
certain times, it just.
Yes, I just want to make that.
And we can get going on visuals for parents as well, that outlines the MBTA needs, so that'll be helpful.
I think the kids will really like the Charlie cars. I think it's a good,
Yeah.
Good
offset to
alternative.
what we do.
Yeah.
Diane, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further business?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah,
Motion to
so
adjourn.
just
Second,
clarity for me. Does this now go before the school committee on Tuesday, or I can take this?
no, we have to vote. With all due respect to the mayor, I think we could vote in the committee of the whole. I thought it has to be the regular meeting.
Okay, great.
But I mean, unless someone's gonna change their mind. it's-
We'll double, well, I mean, we did vote, but we'll double check to see if it just needs to be recommendations of the committee, because this is the
That's
committee as a
what-
whole.
That's what my
So
thought
I'm not sure,
because we don't vote the warrants or anything like that. in the
And
committee.
the only reason I'm asking is because you won't see these changes reflected in the line detail of the budget. But the bottom line does change,
But yeah, because this
Yeah.
isn't our money.
but I can't implement these changes until the school committee.
Right, but it's not our money, so it doesn't, you're not implementing any changes, right?
Right, what I'm saying is,
This next Tuesday.
But I'm confused, that this doesn't affect our budget at all.
well, it affects the way that I would present the details.
Oh, okay.
If I
No,
knew,
I'm not
okay,
trying.
we need $250,000 for Charlie cards, I would that could change the way the detail appears. But if this vote is leading to the committee voting on Tuesday, then you may not see this in the detail. But the bottom line dollars will just be shifted around in practice once the policy is changed. That makes
So
sense.
I see what you're saying, but they are also gonna vote the budget on Tuesday. So I think that, hopefully, yeah. I think that we should incorporate these changes into the budget so that when you present, whatever you present for them to vote on Tuesday is the real final document based on this. Especially, yeah, there's a forum here that supports the
That's okay.
strategy.
No, I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, I know that last time we had a discussion on whether or not it followed law, open meeting law, and I'm pretty sure committee of the whole reflects a valid vote. It was advertised, but I will check, any of our good old friends of Demers or Robert's rules, but I'm pretty sure it works, but if not, we will have it as a recommendation from the committee of the whole to the committee of the whole on Tuesday.
And that's my strong preference.
Yeah.
So that historically, we can see, even in the detail of the budget, the policy changes that were adopted in June to lead into the next year.
Yeah, and maybe one of the things we can do as a matter of format is make sure the committee takes up this matter and votes it before they take up the budget.
Sure,
Great.
that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get a ruling on the next day or two.
I hope it's fine, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't trying to, I just.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a good point.
Are we adjourned? Yeah.